I was born in County Westmeath, Ireland, in the small city of Mullingar, located about 50 miles outside of Dublin. My mother was born and raised on a farm in Ireland, but like many generations of young Irish before the Celtic Tiger roared in the late 90s and early 2000s, she and her sister emigrated in their late teen years to live with their aunt in New York City. She met my father at a dance in the Bronx, and the rest, as they say, is history. My parents were living in Barcelona, Spain, just before I was born, but rather than return to Spain or stay in Ireland after the birth, they came home shortly thereafter to the U.S. due to a family illness. Who knows, Amelie or Beatrice, with a slight change in circumstances, we could have been neighbors. One interesting fact about my own emigration to the States is my parents seemingly brought me into the country smuggled in their luggage, which I only discovered about 20 years later when I went to apply for my law license and learned that the U.S. State Department had no record of me coming or going until several years after I was born. My parents and I have had some good chuckles over those circumstances since. I spent most of my formative years in upstate New York. Most people, when they think of New York, think of the bright lights of the big city, but the part of New York I grew up in was very rural, with lots of rolling hills and dairy farms. But I had just enough exposure to city life growing up. New York City was only a couple of hours away, and my father had been born and raised in a suburb of New York, that I decided that I didn't want to stay in rural upstate New York long term. So, off to college in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yep, I had an 8th grade history teacher who had gone to school in the Deep South, and he took me and some of my high school classmates on a tour of big southern universities, where, aside from the Saturdays of college football and some occasional studying, the highlight absolutely was meeting a lovely lady, Dana, who was born and raised in Louisiana, and as she would say, I certainly had to come to Louisiana to meet her. She never would have ventured up to the cold Northeast to meet me. In keeping with what most people think happens in Louisiana, I majored in alligator wrestling while attending LSU. Little did I realize how helpful that major would be when it came to negotiating with service providers many years later. After graduating from LSU, I decided to attend law school in our nation's capital, George Washington University. What a place to study law. Read constitutional law one day, meet with a Supreme Court justice the next day to discuss his rulings. In this case, we had the good fortune to meet with Justice William Brennan in his chambers. Dana and I were married between my second and third year of law school. After school, I joined a law firm in D.C. and spent 6 years representing big defense contractors in various legal matters with the federal government. Most of those 6 years were spent representing General Dynamics, a major defense contractor, after the government terminated a contract with GD, claiming they hadn't lived up to their obligations. Okay, so the attack plane that GD was building never flew after many years and many billions of dollars of development. But it looked pretty good in pictures, don't you think? I began my in-house career with Texas Instruments in Dallas, Texas. And although TI is known around the world for making really great calculators, I represented them in the building and selling of some of their lesser-known products like Javelin missiles. Lesser known, that is, of course, unless you're the subject of an attack by the United States government, in which case you're probably very familiar with Javelin missiles. I eventually became a Raytheon employee when TI sold its defense business to Raytheon. Eventually, I found my way to Cisco in 1999 when a law firm friend, Mark Michaels, who many of you will know and who recently took the early retirement, called to tell me about this really cool company he had been working with. I'd never heard of Cisco, but soon enough, I was sold. I started my career supporting Cisco's federal business in Herndon, Virginia, and after 2 years, I moved over to supporting Cisco's New York City enterprise business, where Cisco really first established itself with the major Wall Street firms like Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs. It was during this brief stint supporting the New York enterprise team that I experienced what I consider to be my proudest moment as a Cisco employee. In the wake of the awful events of September 11th, and amid such destruction in the financial district of Manhattan, several of our largest financial institution customers were put out of business by the devastation hit that was felt at their buildings and in their networks. Cisco immediately went into action to help our country and these important customers get back into business as quickly as possible. We loaned out valuable office space in New York City with no paper ever exchanging hands and shipped millions of dollars of networking equipment to New York to put Wall Street back in business in just a few days. There was no thought of looking for purchase orders or payments. It was simply about taking care of our country and restoring global financial markets. It was truly an incredible experience. It was a short while after this that I took my third different job at Cisco, supporting Cisco service provider customers. And the service provider business of Cisco has been my primary focus until our last department reorganization in 2008, when my role was expanded some. During this time supporting our sales to service providers, Cisco acquired Scientific Atlanta in early 2006, and shortly after, my family and I relocated to the Atlanta, Georgia area to learn about SA's very successful SP business and to help integrate what was and still is Cisco's largest acquisition of legal talent, with nearly 15 members of the SA legal department still continuing to grow their careers at Cisco. In the reorganization that was announced in 2008, the additional responsibility I took on was focused around the development of new business models. The great work of that team under Ruben Buck's leadership, by folks like Anjali Soni, Andrea Ruggieri, and our own Richard French, led us to take the next step in this current reorganization with expanded solution development teams now aligned to the new SP and enterprise segments. So now, as I embark on what is actually my 7th job at Cisco in a little over 12 years, I know you're wondering, can't this guy find a steady job? I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you this week and in the months and years to come. We have an exciting journey ahead as we work together to define the next Cisco. As a final note, my family has really enjoyed the 5 years we've been living in the Atlanta area. It's a very pretty part of the country, as many of you who attended our All Hands in 2005 can attest. We're now blessed with 3 wonderful boys, Brennan, 16, a junior in high school, Patrick, 14, a freshman, and Keenan, 7, our first grader. They keep us busy with various youth sports year-round, but we do also find time in the fall to root on the LSU Tiger football team and to also do a little skiing out west during the winter.